Welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Margaret Malewski, and we're here to talk about how to pick a career you love. If you're here today, it's probably because you have some questions or are unsure about how to pick a career you're really passionate about. And Greg just gave us a really great introduction to what it means to be passionate about your career. So, a show of hands. Is anyone here questioning what they want to do with the rest of their life and what their purpose is? Okay, just calibrating. Okay. Two key questions I'll be circling around today, and which I assume that you're holding in your head is how do I know what I'm passionate about? I think many of us want to do something great, but not everybody is blessed with knowing at age 9 what it is exactly that they want to do. So the question of, how do I know what I'm passionate about? And then the other one that I've heard a lot is I've picked a career, but I'm not really sure this is the right thing. I mean, I don't really wake up every morning going, yeah, this is awesome, right? And so sort of what do I do now? So those are the kinds of things I'm gonna talk about. This is going to be much more workshop style. So if Greg and the philosophers are going to give you sort of these big ideas here, pull out your notebooks and be ready to answer questions because I'm going to ask you some, right? This is going to be a thinking exercise for you, and you'll be filling in some stuff. So I encourage you to sort of participate and treat this as an opportunity to think about what you want to do and come out with a better answer at the end. I guess I should introduce myself a little bit. Why am I even tackling this topic? So my own background can be described probably as varied is probably the best word. I grew up in Montreal. My parents were Polish. I grew up first going to a French school, then to an English school. The reason I mention that is the cultures are so different. And then I ended up deciding to go to Poland to do my university degree. This was in the early 90s. Most people were leaving Eastern Europe. I was the crazy person who went to study in Eastern Europe. Why? Well, when I was 16, I held it in my mind as, I don't want to go to the US and do the fraternity sorority thing. That seems stupid to me, and I'm not judging. I mean, that was just how I thought about it, and I want to do something real. And boy, was it ever real. At the time, there was still no food on the shelves. There was still no services in the way that I grew up and understood them in the West, so it was a big culture shock to go there. I studied architecture. Why architecture? I wanted to be a sculptor. My parents are both engineers. And let's just say that being an artist was not part of the program. So architecture was an engineering degree, and it seemed like a good compromise. So that should tell you something already about what we heard in the other room. There's a bit of, but the thing is, I had already read Rand, and I really wanted to be first-handed. And so on the assumption I was going to be an architect, I was really driven and focused and goal-directed and integrated, but the base was missing. I didn't actually care about architecture, so this was a bit of a problem. So after 6.5 years, painful years because it was a hard program, I graduated, and I took my first ticket out of there. I got recruited by Procter Gamble to work in their Middle East division. It's a long story how that came about. So I ended up first working in Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan for the Always feminine hygiene brand, which was interesting in and of itself. And then I actually shifted to the Israeli market and worked on Pantene and Head Shoulders marketing. So another interesting thing was marketing shampoo to Orthodox Israeli women who shave their heads and don't have hair. But they wear wigs. Care for your wig. I was there during 9/11. So things got kind of heated, and I ended up leaving about 10 months later because I wasn't comfortable with the level of risk of remaining there. Came back to Canada and wrote a book about living abroad. It was called Gen Expat, the Young Professional's Guide to Making a Successful Life Abroad. So I sort of integrated all these international experiences and taught many cross-cultural programs. And being based in Vancouver at the time, dealt with many Asian students who had come from a very different culture where what their parents tell them to do is extremely important. And the kind of programs that we taught were to prepare them for doing a master's program in North America. And they thought they needed to learn English, and we knew that it was about critical thinking and independent thinking skills. And it was incredibly hard to shift the mindset of what they wanted to learn with what we knew they needed to know. So that was my challenge, and it was a really interesting one, and I brought a lot of objectivist ideas to that at the time. But I didn't think teaching was my ultimate purpose, so I ended up going to business school, and then started a business that made scuba diving computers. Anyone scuba dive here? Okay, so you know that you need to measure your depth, the time that you're underwater, and your decompression obligation if you go very deep. So we manufactured something that was as powerful as an iPhone, encased in gel, and basically able to go down to 300 meters. I would not wish designing underwater electronics on my worst enemy. It is very difficult because water gets in there, things go bad, and it's a life support device. So if anyone dies wearing your thing, they sue you. It was fun. No, it was a really interesting time, very challenging. And I ended up selling the business a year ago, which is how I came to Strive. The board of directors approached me and said, hey, we know you're passionate about student stuff, why don't you join us? So it's been very varied, and some of the conclusions that I reached at the different stages about what I liked to do, what I didn't like to do, what I was motivated by, informed the talk. So that's why I walked you through this whole background, just to say, part of this is learned on painful experience. So we hear a lot about following our passion, and some people seem to magically know what they want to do when they're 12. They want to be a novelist, a doctor, a robotics engineer. But what about those of us who are 20, 25, and still don't know? So this is what we're going to be talking about. So an important place to start is by introspecting about the things that you enjoy, that you find interesting, that come naturally to you. And one place to start is, what did you love to do as a kid? So now this is actually an exercise. Think about what you like to do when you're a child. Were you building things, highly focused? Were you outside exploring, inside, outside? Were you alone or were you in a group? Were you thinking about ideas or were you futzing with things? What kinds of things were you doing? I think these are really important guideposts, because when you're a child, you're not weighing the merits of building a sandcastle for your future career versus playing with Lego versus playing with dolls and the skills you just go by what you like, what you feel passionate about, what your curiosity drives you to. And I think that's the emotion that Rand is referring to, that Greg was referring to, that sort of curiosity and desire to do something is what we need to be very mindful of. When do we experience that? When did you experience that as a child? So does anyone want to share? What was it that you loved to do? Come.
I love reading and generally solving puzzles, Sudoku or that kind of puzzles, and can just be sitting there all day in that with my parents. Sometimes they're calling me, but I didn't hear it. I don't hear them, so I'm pretty absorbed in those kind of stuff.
Okay, so solving puzzles, solving problems. Okay, very interesting. Anyone else?
Well, I love mixing materials, such as how would it be like if you mix oil with lotion?
Are you studying chemistry now? Very cool. Anyone else?
I like making tents and small houses.
So you like making playground sets?
Small mini wooden sculptures that are usually tents or houses.
So okay, so you're building tents or houses or architecture, and what are you studying now? Ah, okay. Sorry, I didn't want to put too fine a point on that one. Anyone else? What about you?
Definitely an outdoor explorer, because I went to school in different towns where I live, so I just alighted from school and go looking around the town and find out what the stories went, and drag my parents across the country on train rides so I could visit different places. It was very much learning the world around me and experiencing different places, and I'm still here 5,000 miles from where I'm doing that.
Okay, so you were an outdoor explorer. Fantastic. Dare I ask what you're studying now?
Music technology.
Music technology, okay. Anyone else? What about you?
As a kid, I'd get kind of obsessed with finding algorithm, in a loose way, where if something happened, I'll try and find kind of almost like a system of cause and effect
So you're interested in cause and effect. Natural sciences or philosophy, I mean, you could take it a couple ways. What are you studying now?
I'm studying psych, but I plan on changing to computer science.
Okay. Studying psychology and planning to study computer science. The reason I'm repeating it is we're being recorded, so I just want to make sure that it all gets captured. So, good questions to consider is, what activity did you get lost in for hours? What were you willing to practice over and over and over again? I mean, how many of you, I don't know, skateboarded or had a BMX bike or something like that, and you're willing to crash and tear up your knees and just keep at it? What classes did you love doing work for? Which ones did you really not enjoy? What did people say you did well? And the reason I'm saying this is not so much about the opinion that people had of you, but there's this analogy in cross-cultural studies about being a fish in water. If we're really good at something, it's really obvious to us that this is easy, but that thing might not come as easily to other people. And so sometimes the kinds of things that people say about us can be a cue to what we are unusually good at. So to give you an example, my former business partner knew every single credit card number that he'd ever had, every single phone number, driver's license, passport number, you name it, he knew those numbers. I can't even remember my own phone number, right? But to him it was so obvious that he didn't know that this was a particular skill of his. Whereas to me, who struggles to remember numbers, right? And conversely, I remember names and words and patterns easily. I mean, when I was, I learned German in high school in 2 years, of two classes per day, to the point where I could study fluently in a German university. Because to me, it was just, well, it's kind of like Polish and kind of like French and kind of like English, and it just all made sense to me, whereas somebody else might have been tearing their hair out. So it's important to pay attention to what's so easy to you that it kind of seems obvious and that other people seem not to be able to do as easily, right? That can give you a clue as to where your strengths lie, and it's something that's worth paying attention to. So another question for you. What did you say you wanted to do when you were 12, 15? I can tell you the 3 things I wanted to be. 1, a professional windsurfer. 2, a sculptor. 3, a CIA agent. All 3 seemed equally attractive to me. And I've gone on to pursue forms of them. So yes, I did apply to the CIA. I couldn't get in, I'm not American. And now I kite surf every chance I get. So I actually got to do a lot of the kite surfing I loved, and I did some of the sculpture I loved in architecture school. So the themes kind of kept going. How about you guys? What did you want to be? Astronaut? Oh, I've got a good example coming up for you. Anyone else?
Actually, I work in the CIA also.
CIA?
Yeah.
Did you join? Well, you couldn't tell us anyway. Anyone else? What's that? Okay. Okay, so you did want to do IT. Okay, so let's see. How many of us have said, I want to be an astronaut, or something similar? And how many of us have dismissed that childhood ambition? I'm seeing some hands coming up. So let's watch a video here, and I'll see if...
When you're on tour, you dream this music. You're with it, it's with you. When we're not playing, we're waiting to play.
Can you guys sort of hear?
Live, you're waiting to do this. I want to walk on the moon. I decided when I was 9. Neil and Buzz are the coolest human beings ever. I want to walk on the moon. I'm 9 years old. What do I do next? And so I started reading about it and learning to scuba dive and join the Air Cadets and learn to fly and go to university. All of those things were trying to gather each of the skills that someday may let me do something that was my end life dream. And the question we all face is not what do I want to be doing in 30 years? It's the real hard question is, what should I do next?
So I don't know if you guys recognize this gentleman. His name is Colonel Chris Hadfield. He's a Canadian. He was on the space station. He played ground control to Major Tom on a guitar. So isn't that interesting? He was 9 years old and he said he wanted to be an astronaut. And what did he do? He did something about it. He took scuba diving classes. He went to college for it. So if you're thinking about your childhood ambition, why are you not pursuing it? Let me see if I can get back to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So Chris Hadfield said he wanted to be an astronaut, and he took the steps to do it. For every profession commonly held as uncertain, unrealistic, difficult to get into, somebody did it, right? I mean, somebody is Tom Cruise. Somebody is Chris Hadfield, right? Someone's a prima ballerina, right? Someone's doing that job. Or maybe there's a job that no one is doing yet, but you want to do. I mean, someone founded Uber, and look at where it's at, right? So somebody's doing. Why not you? So let's go through reasons why not, because the thing I'm particularly interested in, and let's say I have a lot of experience, is all the reasons why I didn't do the things I wanted to do. So the first common reason is it's not a career. So let's say you say, I like X, I like space, TV, video games, but that's not really a career. Well, look at space, look at Chris Hadfield, right? He just made a list of the things he needed to learn and went for it. There might be a situation in which you're not physically capable to do the thing that you want to do. Maybe to be an astronaut, you have to have perfect eyesight, and you don't. So then you can consider, well, is there a related career that I can do that allows for my particular physical limitations? Or you want to be a basketball player, but you can't because you don't have the height. So, you know, so there might be like physical limitations. But otherwise, there actually really isn't any. So let's look at it. TV, Jack Welch's daughter. Do you guys know Jack Welch? He was the CEO of General Electric. Very, very well-known guy, very successful CEO, great motivational speaker. And I read an article in which he was talking about his children and their career choices. Now, it's tough to be the kid of a guy who specializes in career advice, right? And you can see how this is going to be a problem. So he was worried, he and his wife were worried that his daughter was spending so much time watching TV. I mean, that's what she was doing all the freaking time. And, you know, you could think, well, watching TV is not a career. Well, guess what? She ended up becoming I guess, a talent agent in Hollywood. So all her experience of watching TV shows, knowing what works, knowing what actors she likes, knowing what actors she doesn't like, all came together in that particular career choice. So even something like watching TV is a career choice. But I have an even better example of video games. So this is my best friend's brother. Graduated high school, started college, didn't really enjoy it. Started working at a kind of Starbucks in Montreal called Java U. Maybe he smoked a little bit of pot, might have happened. Played a lot of video games. He was just playing video games all day long. He started having panic attacks. I mean, I don't want to psychologize, but I hypothesized that there was some worry about, well, hey, I'm not getting ahead in life. I mean, he comes from a very successful professional family, and smoking pot and video games is not exactly part of the program. So there's a lot of anxiety about the fact that he wasn't doing what he's supposed to do. And his parents took him to psychologists and all this. And then one summer, they were in Vermont, where they have a country house, and his neighbor said, hey, why don't you come up in my plane with me? Why don't you come up in the Cessna with me? So he flew the Cessna with his neighbor, really loved it, really enjoyed it, just had a positive reaction to flying. Started taking flying lessons, took a ton of flying lessons, got really into debt. Decided he wants to be a pilot. Well, guess what? To be a pilot, you need a college degree. So he went back to college, but this time he knew why. So he studied geography, loved studying geography. I think his first degree was like engineering or something, which he didn't care about. Loved geography because it was maps, it was directions, it was flying, it related to his purpose. He was really motivated. He did super well. Then when he was about to graduate, he realized, you know what, being a pilot is kind of being a glorified bus driver. Not really that, I mean, it's a lot of hours sitting in a plane, right? He's like, you know what, I like the geography piece. So he joined IATA, which is the international governing body of air transportation. And I guess they do some regulations or some, you know, principles for how airlines should work. I don't know exactly, but anyway, did that. Really liked it, but was kind of annoyed at being a grunt worker. I mean, he was just sort of administering things. So he decided to get an MBA. So he went and did his MBA, did really well at it. And then there were some recruiters on campus who were recruiting managers for video game companies. Well, guess what? Fast forward 3 years later, he's now a product designer at Ubisoft. And you guys probably know better what Ubisoft makes, but he just launched some 4th iteration of a very successful video game and is doing very, very well. And all the sort of steps along the way, his passion for video games, it's still captured, but notice how things changed. Initially, he was studying something because he felt he ought to, and it wasn't motivating him, and he was smoking pot and playing video games to escape that. And then when he started following his curiosity, who thought that flying a plane is going to be a career, right? It's sort of by following his passion and his curiosity, it led to interesting things, and each thing started to make sense in the context of the next one and the next one and the next one. And now it all came together into something that makes sense to him. So that the primary thing to pay attention to is, what do you have that curiosity for, right? So it's not a career. I don't buy that. Watching TV can be a career. If you find, and I think this is every interest can be the kernel of a career. You just need to find what value you're going to create. So just playing video games isn't adding value. Designing video games is. Watching TV is not a creation of a value. But if you're engaging in what you're doing and thinking, what's a good actor, what's not a good actor, what's a good show, what's not a good show, if you're starting to form an opinion, that's the seed of value creation, right? So don't dismiss something that you're attracted to. Everything can be a kernel of a career as long as you think about what value you're going to create. So another typical reason is it's an uncertain career. That's another reason we typically dismiss something that we're passionate about. Well, first of all, no career is certain. If somebody's telling you your career is certain, forget about that. It's just not true. Look at taxis. 10 years ago, you might have thought taxi driving is something very solid and reliable. People will always need transportation. Now you have Uber. Sorry, taxi drivers, you're SOL. Cities change, right? 50 years ago, that's not that long time ago. Detroit was a flourishing city. And now it's decrepit, empty, and people have left because they've gone somewhere else. You could change. Remember the Boston Marathon bombing? One of the people we profiled in the Undercurrent was a lady who ran that marathon and lost her leg, and she was a professional dancer. And she's taught herself to dance with an artificial limb. So you could change. You could have a heart attack. You could have an injury. I'm not saying this in a pessimistic way, but there could be something that happens to you that prevents you from practicing. If you're a neurosurgeon and you get Parkinson's, well, that's not going to work very well, right? So forget certainty as a criterion. It's just not certain. The only certainty is you. The skills you develop, the expertise you acquire, your ability and your desire to keep learning and changing, right? Look at all the different things I've done. It's not, there's no guarantees, it's just the energy and attention and effort and focus I brought to each thing that made me successful at it. It's also a stronger reason to do work you love. In terms of staying competitive over time, if you're doing a job that's just a 9-to-5er for you, you just go there, punch the clock, and leave. Well, you're not going to do that job in your off hours. You're not going to be thinking about that, right? Let's say you're a plumber. You don't care about plumbing, you just do it. And let's say the guy next to you actually is excited by the problem of getting stuff to flow, right? And things to seal. And he's looking at the new technologies and new ideas. Well, if somebody's cutting back on their staff, who are they going to retain, right? Or if technology changes and a new technology is introduced, which of the two of you is going to be able to move forward? So to the extent that you do something you love and you're engaged in it and you do it in your free time, you're going to succeed more. So that's an argument to do something you love more rather than less. Reasons why not. My parents expect whatever. So this is a girl who posted on Humans of New York. By the way, I love that website. Great stories. So she says, I'll read it from here, I think. It seems that most children in America are encouraged to follow their dreams, but my parents are immigrants, and in China, most children are expected to choose a path that will help provide for the needs of their family. I enjoy music, but it's difficult to go my own way without feeling cold-hearted or estranged. How many of you can relate to that? I'm seeing some hands. So there's two assumptions in her story. One is you owe something to your parents. And the other one is that music is not a career. So let me tackle both of them. So the first one, you owe your parents. I will give you a brief answer to what Ayn Rand has to say about that. I mean, there's a lot more you can read, but this is where philosophy can help in making a career choice. So in many cultures, and this is where my cross-cultural studies play in, your parents had you and put effort into you because they eventually expect you to put effort back into them. There's a mutual responsibility involved there. But in some sense, it's slavery. I mean, you didn't choose to come into the world. You know, you didn't ask to be born. And yet you're born with this never-ending obligation that you didn't choose. What if you don't like your parents? What if you don't want to do what they want you to do, right? So are you an indentured slave from the day you're born to your family? Is that an obligation you bear? Rand would say that no, your parents chose to have you because they wanted to have the experience of raising a child, because they wanted to have that relationship, and that was their choice and their responsibility. You know, they committed, okay, I'm going to, foster, nurture this child for 18 years, but then they're on their own. They don't owe me anything. Their life is theirs to live. Their life is theirs to enjoy. And if we get some wealth of exchange back as a voluntary exchange because we value each other, that's great. But if not, well, that's luck of the draw, right? There's no guarantees. So in that sense, you're free to pursue your life because it is your life. But it's difficult, and I've experienced this because certainly my parents had an expectation that they gave to me and I need to give back to them. And it was very hard to break that because it felt very dishonest to me to break something that felt like a trade, right? I am a trader. I want to trade. I want to give value for value. And here's this trade that I'm going to sever, right? From their perspective, they're going to think, oh, she's bailing on us. She's not honoring the agreement. Except I never signed that agreement. I was never voluntarily asked to participate in that. It was just imposed on me. It took me a long time, and I'm not saying that you should do this or that you should take my word for it, but I'm just describing my journey, so I'm not prescribing here. It took me a long, long time, 30 years in fact, to get to the point where I accepted that I actually could break that and that they would be disappointed in me because they, from their morality, from their perspective, from the trade that they're used to in their culture, would see me as someone who violated an agreement with them. Not explicitly, but that's implicit, that I betrayed them in some way. And that I would have to live with my parents' disapproval. And that I would feel moral about my actions and that they would judge me as immoral. And I had to be comfortable with that. But it's my life, and I didn't want to keep living something that they wanted for me. So it was painful. It was not easy. And that's part of the reason why in Strive we have a mentorship program, because we realize that if you are interested in these ideas and you're interested in pursuing this, there are some really painful and difficult choices to make that can make you feel alone, abandoned, friendless, like a traitor. And so by having this network of people that you can connect with, it can help you potentially make those decisions. And I'm not saying that you should or you ought, but if you choose to make them, that's why the mentorship program is there, because I relied a lot on many adults who were supportive of my choices and said, no, it's your life. And they helped me a lot, and I know that could be helpful to you. So that's the brief summary of what Objectivism has to say about you owe it to them. And if you want to talk about it more, there's a wealth of materials on that. And music is not a career. I'll give you another story. It's a little bit anecdotal, but this is what I can bring to the table. My fiance's sister wanted to be a musician. She wanted to play in a symphonic orchestra. Now that's one of those careers you think, oh, it's risky. We don't know what's going to happen. Indeed, for many years, she took the seats that were freed up on vacation. I guess as a musician, and someone might correct me here, you have a seat in an orchestra, and it's your responsibility to fill it if you want to take time off. So she would sort of hop in, but she never got a permanent seat. And she got frustrated with the uncertainty and all these things, and she decided to become a military musician. So now she has a career in the military, playing for all sorts of ceremonies. It's paid, it's benefits, it's good hours. She retires at 42, and then she can have another career, and she's got a pension. So again, I'm not necessarily advocating relying on government programs, just for those who might be concerned about that. But I'm saying that even if you take a route that is perceived as risky, there's always ways to adapt it to some, if you're interested in sculpture, maybe you do sculpture for the movies or the stage, right? I mean, there's always money-making options in what it is that you love to do. So I'm just sort of debunking the two assumptions in this girl's comment. So your life is your own, and you have to live with yourself every day. So that's my answer to my parents expect X. Another reason I think people don't pursue the career they love is it's beneath me. So this is my personal insight. Let's think of America a generation ago, or maybe 2 generations ago, 1920s. What percentage of people were farmers with maybe a grade school education, maybe a high school education? I don't know the number, but I'm guessing it's 50 plus. What percentage had blue-collar jobs? What percentage were white-collar jobs? So if you're coming from being a farmer, pretty much every job is considered a social step up. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, but it's considered that. But now as everybody's gone to college, I mean, the number of people going to college, what do you do if you just want to be a plumber? I mean, if both your parents went to med school and are famous physicians, what if you just like to tinker with stuff? That's really tough, right? And I realized that was something I experienced, right? My parents are well educated, and certain careers were just not in the realm of consideration because I could not go work at Starbucks. My dad would pay me an allowance to not go work at Starbucks and bring shame to the family. He didn't want me to work in college. I had to hide from him that I taught English to make money because he didn't want to be ashamed that his daughter had to have a Joe job. And I just wanted experience. I knew it was going to be useful for me, right? So I think this is a really interesting problem, and I think it's a new problem, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse as more people, especially in America, rise through educational ranks. And I think that the percentage of people in the general population, if you just took a sample, the number of people who like to think about stuff versus people who like to work with their hands hasn't changed. And yet more people are expected to do office jobs because that's the prestigious thing to do. That's a big problem. So Ayn Rand said there's no such thing as a lousy job, only lousy men who don't care to do it. I don't think there's any shame in being a plumber. In fact, in Vancouver, I called Yaletown Plumbing. This guy has a cool little truck with a 1950s plumber's, decal on it, and he looks really cool, and he came and fixed something for me, and I chatted with him because he looked, he didn't have a plumber crack going on. He was a dapper young gentleman fixing my plumbing, and I said, well, what's your story? And he said, well, I used to have an office job, and I hated it. Now I do this, and guess what? I make $150,000 a year. Love my work. I feel very efficacious. Every day I solve things. I make them work better. I like my job. I'm happy. We're cool, right? I've had a great experience with Uber cabs in Atlanta. I was here to see this place 2 weeks ago, and I was posting on the Hot Potato page all my exciting cab experiences. One girl said she graduated, worked in a law office, hated the job, was bored, Ubered on the weekends, made good money. She was like, hey, I like this. Then she started Ubering full-time. She did it for a year. She saved $80,000 driving an Uber. She loves the independence, loves setting her own schedule, loves the idea that she can pick her routes and her times to make the most money. And now she's moving from Atlanta to LA to become a screenwriter because she's saved up the money. So no job is beneath you. There's, as long as you do your job well, as long as you do it thoughtfully, it's all fair game. There is no shame in any particular job. And another person I want to refer you to this is Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs. I don't know if you've ever watched this show. He does a really great job of explaining that there is no such thing as a bad job. So what's your reason why not? If you haven't pursued that childhood passion or that thing that you're really interested about, does anyone want to share? Is anyone brave enough to? Did any of the reasons I mentioned resonate? Okay. So what's the one valid reason to do something? Because that's almost more interesting, right? Well, I put forth that the only reason to do something is because I want to. And not the flaky I want to, like I want to party or whatever, but because I'm curious about this, because I have fun doing it, because I want to spend time learning and practicing it. This is something I like to futz with, I like to spend time on, I like to explore. It's something that you search the net for in your free time, right? That kind of thing. And this is because I have a strong opinion on how it could be done. This was my big aha moment. So another anecdote. When I sold my business, I took 6 months off and spent a lot of time kite surfing. It was fun. Then I started working on another book. I was actually working on a novel. And I was going to a coffee shop, starting to brainstorm ideas. And then I went to Jason's wedding. Jason's actually in the room. And they spoke to me about joining the Undercurrent. And I was kind of like, I don't know. And then one day I'm sitting in this coffee shop and I'm supposed to be working on my book. And what happens is this fully formed plan for the Undercurrent just wrote itself. It just happened. And I realized I had a very strong opinion on how I think a good club should be run. I'd been an active club member in college, and I had loved certain things. I'd been an Objectivist club member as an adult, and I thought it was kind of boring. No offense to anyone, but I thought it was not that exciting. It wasn't what it could be. I knew the kinds of things I thought were important in Objectivism and that could bring people together, and I'd had all these thoughts for a long time. It's not like I invented it on the spot, but I had all these thoughts. These were things I thought about in my free time, and so all of a sudden this just materialized, right? It just came out. And so I had a strong opinion on how it should be done. And another example of that was in architecture school. I did well. I worked hard. I was probably in the top 5 of my class, but I was never going to be in the top 1 or 2. And I wanted to be the best of the best. And then I realized that the thing that was different between me and the number 1 kid in my school is I had no opinion about architecture. I had not grown up looking at buildings. I walked past them and I didn't give a fuck. Right? Like, they really just didn't do anything to me. And so, yeah, of course I could sit there and read the books and read the principles, and I'm intelligent and I could put something together. I had no opinion about it, right? But people, oh my God, when I was 6 years old, my parents took me to Greece, and I looked at all the sculptures of the naked men all the freaking time. My parents were creeped out. I mean, this is like not normal, right? Then I kept wanting to go to ballets, because ballet, you see the human body in motion and you see the muscles and the movement. I wanted to be, I kept drawing naked people, I kept sculpting naked people. I just thought it was phenomenal, right? So I had an opinion about what would make a good sculpture of a human being and what I liked. And I had an opinion what I really didn't like. I had no opinion about architecture. And I still didn't give a shit about architecture, right? So I think that is something, if you're thinking about 2 things, what do you have a strong opinion about? And where do you have a unique idea of what could be done better? This is the value added. And if this is something you're interested in, pay particular attention to Alex Epstein's talk, because I think he's going to be talking about that, which is the thing that makes your interest into a career is whether you have an opinion of how it could be done and how it could be done better, and that opinion is unique, and that opinion is valuable, and someone's going to pay you for it, right? I love watching TV. I know what makes a good actor and how I should recruit a good actor. That's a career, right? That's how you connect the interest with what you're going to do. And the final point is, because I'm willing to go through hell and high water to see my idea come to life. For those of you who've read The Fountainhead, you know that Howard Rourke, when he can't build the buildings he wants, the ones he has an opinion on, he goes to work in a quarry rather than do work that he's not passionate about, that he doesn't believe in. So it's that commitment. One important distinction and one thing to pay attention to is I want to be versus I want to do. All of us want to be super hot. How many of us want to work out every day? All of us want to be successful entrepreneur, business person, whatever. How many of us want the risk and responsibility and sleepless nights that come with that, right? I want to be an investment banker. How many of us want to put in 80-hour weeks? I want to be in a relationship. How many of us want to go through the difficult discussions, the commitment, the adaptations to the other person, the headache, right? I mean, there's time and effort and commitment involved in having a happy relationship. I want to be an astronaut. Now, let's go back to Chris Hadfield for a moment, and I'll show you a broader segment of his video. And you can tell me whether he just wanted to be an astronaut or whether he wanted to do.
American Signature Furniture presents How to American Signature Furniture.
So I'm just wondering, how do you fundamentally change yourself? And also wondering whether the perspective that you've gained from being outside of Earth has helped you with that.
Thanks, Janae. To go to the core of your question, the most dangerous thing you're asked to do as an astronaut is to fly a rocket ship. On my last flight, I was in space for 5 months, but 50% of the risk, half of all of the risk that I was going to face in 5 months off the planet was in the first 9 minutes. Its launch is risky. And on my first space flight back 20 years ago, the odds of death were 1 in 38, which if Air Canada, which is the national airline, they would crash 9 airplanes a day if they flew at that rate. So how do you face up to danger in your life? And a lot of us, everybody in this room, has just denied themselves something in life because we're afraid of it. We just basically say, I won't do that because I'm afraid. I won't bungee jump. I won't get married. I won't fly an airplane. I won't, whatever. I'm fearful, and therefore I'm just not going to do that thing. But of course, all of those experiences have a richness that maybe make them worth doing. So how do you change yourself from just hiding behind an amorphous fear to digging into it, to figuring out that this is something worth taking a risk for? We're all going to die eventually anyway. So what things in your life did you decide were worth taking a risk? And to me, I think early on, giving yourself a definition of what success might look like. If these things that I'm doing go perfectly, how's it going to end up? What am I going to be doing? What am I really trying to accomplish with my life? Because that then lets you choose what you're going to do next. I want to walk on the moon. I decided when I was 9. Neil and Buzz are the coolest human beings ever. I want to walk on the moon. I'm 9 years old. What do I do next? And so I started reading about it and learning to scuba dive and join the Air Cadets and learn to fly and go to university. All of those things were trying to gather each of the skills that someday may let me do something that was my end life dream. And the question we all face is not what do I want to be doing in 30 years? It's the real hard question is, what should I do next? And to me, that's the real key of how you change yourself, is give yourself a long-term definition of how you want this to turn out so that it helps you choose the small things you need to deliberately whittle away and change about yourself. So that you can separate danger from fear. You can say, this is a risk worth taking. This is a risk not worth taking. This is something that's important to me. And
So in your opinion, was Chris Hadfield concerned with being an astronaut, being famous, being well known, or was he interested in the doing? So he wanted to go through all the difficulties, the fear, the risk. He liked that. And being an astronaut was the sort of end result, right? It wasn't what he was motivated by. It was what he was motivated in the long term, but he liked the journey. He liked every single steps. So every value pursuit, even one you're passionate about, will entail lots of pain, difficult doing, long hours, risk, setbacks, to earn the being, the reward. And so Mark Manson, he's a blogger, put it really well. What is the pain you want to sustain? Have you guys heard this line? The way he says is, we're all alike in our aspirations. We all want to be happy, have a job and a family we love. But what we differ in is what we want to struggle for, what we want to take risks for, what we want to work hard for. So those who like to work out will have a good body. Those who like risk and responsibility will be entrepreneurs. Those who like long hours will be iBankers. So the question I have for you is, what is the pain you want to sustain? What is the struggle you want to undertake? Because life inherently requires effort, challenges, setbacks, right? So what is it that you particularly enjoy? right? In preparing this conference, there was a lot of headaches, double bookings at the hotel, stressful things, but I actually like logistics. I like organizing. I like making things run smoothly. I get a huge kick of seeing things come together without too much of a flurry, right? That's what I like. If you told me to sit and, I don't know, dissect a corpse or something like that, I hate biology. I'm not interested in that. That would just be horrible, right? I have no interest in that particular nasty task, if you will, right? Every job has nasty tasks. Which ones are the ones that you most enjoy doing, right? So that's, I think, a really important thing to think about. So, in terms of picking a career you love, just to wrap things up, from the things you want to do that you're curious about, you need to pick one that you want to invest in and develop. Pick it because you think you'll like what you will do every day, not the rewards. If you're not sure you'll like it, set a timeline to try it. Take some classes in it. Speak to mentors who do it. Do an internship. I mean, part of the purpose of Strive, like one of my driving visions for this, is to provide you guys an avenue to talk to mentors that can allow you to take a leap into the unknown, right? If your parents are both doctors and you want to be an astronaut and you know nothing about it, the only way to make a rational decision to be an astronaut, an artist, or whatever else it is you want to do is to talk to people who are doing it, to really understand what it is like every day. Is that a pain you want to sustain? Get the information. Otherwise, yeah, it's a wild guess. Oh yeah, I want to be an artist. No, you should be a doctor. Well, who's going to win that argument? If you say, yes, I want to be an artist because I spoke to 5 artists, I know what they do, I've interned with them, I enjoy the work, I know how I can make money, I have a plan for a backup job if it doesn't work out, that's a conversation you can have, right? It's rational. So that's part of the tools that we want to give you here. A, access to mentors. B, opportunities to practice your leadership skills, to gain confidence in yourself, to gain confidence in that portable you. The only certainty you have is that portable skill set that you have. Develop that, right? Because nothing else is really certain. Everything could change on a dime. So that's a lot of the stuff that underlies Strive. And that's why I'm doing it. So those are the things I'd encourage you in thinking about a career you love. And here are some resources. So I'm happy to send these to you. There's a couple of articles, podcasts, and books. So the first 3 are the first 2 are the Mark Manson articles that I referred to in the talk. Leonard Peikoff, he is Ayn Rand's intellectual heir, has a great couple-minute podcast on picking a career passion and what it takes. What Color is Your Parachute and The Right Mountain are 2 good books that help you analyze your skills and your strengths. So that thing of you don't know how you differ from others or where your skills lie relative to others, they help you tease that out. And the last 2, Shop Class's Soulcraft, An Inquiry into the Value of Work, is a book written by someone who wants to reclaim the value of manual or blue-collar jobs and how they give you a sense of efficacy. So those are the kinds of and Micro's TV programs. So those are some resources for each of the topics I hit. And so now we have, I guess, a couple more minutes, and I'd like to open it up to questions.
What if I want to do more than one thing, like not just do only like engineering or only music? What if I want to do like both as a career? Like
I think you need to swap with the gentleman sitting over here somewhere who's doing music technology. That one, there. No, I don't want to prescribe. Well, why do you see those 2 as in opposition?
Just because that's a good question. Just because the time commitment for like, I have a hard time seeing how I'd be able to master both.
Okay.
Like in terms of like time. Does that make sense?
Well, so there's a couple ways to think about it, right? If you have a genuine interest in both, it might be worth interning or spending a summer or a term or a period of time doing each to see if there's one that you like more than the other in terms of the pain you want to sustain as a work. Because, I mean, the reason you're paid for work and not for hobbies is there's some stuff that's kind of shitty, right? So maybe there's one that you're more willing to do as a form of work and one that you're more willing to do as a hobby, right? So that's a possibility. Another way to think about it is are the 2 integratable? I mean, if you do work in some sort of music-related technology, whether it's music production or making some sort of electronic instruments or some sort of gizmo. Maybe if you're designing an electrical guitar, you have to play it to test it. I don't know. I mean, I'm inventing this. But do you see what I'm saying? Maybe there's a place where they intersect, which is another thing you could consider.
If I may just actually in Columbia University there's a very nice program that allows you to combine engineering with theater. Right? Think about, and that's just one example. So there are a lot of programs where you can look at the integration. If you think about engineering as the art of doing something, what is it doing to us? Music, art, so on, you can easily integrate those.
Okay, I'll take one or two more questions and then we need to wrap up.
Picking up on his point, is there not a case for saying that in the sort of post-internet age, we're starting to move away from the traditional concept of a full-time career and the idea that you have to spend 5 days a week working in one job when you can progress multiple different interests financially for your own gain in a situation now where you can trade on like, I get my income from a job and from trading and then I pursue my interest in music separately. And all of these things can coexist now because the technology's made it possible.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a number of ways in which you can satisfy needs for money earning versus something that's maybe less remunerative, right? Like the girl who drove an Uber to make money for screenwriting or to get that start, or as you say, if you've got aptitudes in day trading and you want to do music. So technology makes a lot of things possible. Yeah. Someone here, yeah.
What if you know what you want to do, but you're not entirely sure the best way to get there? Sort of like you know what the end result is, you know what you want to do, but you also know that there are several steps to get there, and you're not sure the best way to even find the road of those steps.
So can you give me a sense of the specifics?
So for example, I run a business, and I want to work later on working for corporations to try and flip businesses that are failing to make them successful. But I'm not entirely sure like what the best road to take would be to be able to have the experience to be hired to do just that.
Gotcha. Well, this is where mentorship is absolutely critical. Mentorships, internships, I mean, reach out to your network, contact people, ask people, be monomaniacal in asking every single person that, I mean, maybe not literally, but testing every person for, do you know somebody who's turned a business around? And once you find them, you ask them, how did you get to what you're doing? And if they have any kind of employment opportunity, offer to sweep floors for them in exchange for being there for however long to learn, right? Because you're hitting a very important point, is we often don't know how to get to the destination that we want to reach, and you can only get there by just asking a ton of questions. And I'd encourage you to go to the session on mentoring by Sarah, because she'll be touching on how to nurture mentoring relationships, how to ask for that, and what to give back to mentors. Because of course, mentors are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, but they also get something out of it. So how to develop those relationships, how to do that. But absolutely, just keep being just pig-headed about asking. And they say the law of attraction. I'm sure you've all read those books or heard about them, right? There is a kernel of truth, because let's say I don't know much about AV, like this whole mic thing that I've got going on. I didn't not know how to do it, and nor did I know anyone who knew enough how to do it to get a supplier for this conference. So every person I talked to for a month, I was like, do you know anything about AV? Do you know anything about AV? And finally, the guy who's playing at in the band said, oh yeah, I know a little bit about AV. I was like, can you please work for me and find a supplier in Atlanta who can do the AV system here? So just by being really persistent and asking, you eventually hit someone who can, who's happy to help. And if someone says, my dad's best saying, even ugly girls have friends. Even somebody who doesn't know anything that can help you might know someone who can help you. So remember that. Sorry, my dad's a little bit sexist, but take it in good spirit. All right, I have to wrap up, but if you guys have any more questions, I'm happy. I mean, this is a topic I'm passionate about, so feel free to ask me. And thanks for your time and attention. It was fun.